Alright everyone, we start off today with what may be the most surreal, to the point of absurdity, political stance taken by a modern president. A steward in Joe Biden's case, but we'll use the proper term minted by the legacy media to describe the steward. Effectively the other day, Joe Biden, link in the description, I'm not going to archive it because it's a video clip, told the American public. Now think about if any other recent president had done this. If Trump had done this, people would be calling for his fucking head. Coming out and telling the U.S. public, effectively in a self-inflicted manner, our actions towards Ukraine, the U.S. policy towards Ukraine, sanctions and fuel stuff, attacks on currency, censorship, that it's going to cause food shortages in the United States and also Europe. And it will happen. You will feel it. The President of the United States, who is effectively, as chief executive, tasked with seeing over the well-being of the American people, to the exclusion of anything else until that's fulfilled, is telling them to just eat lentils. He has taken up the Great Reset line that I love so much from Bloomberg, let them eat lentils, from last week. This is completely unacceptable. This is not what the U.S. government is paid taxpayer money to do. There were ways to stop this Ukrainian invasion from ever happening in the first place. Biden was twice part of that failing. He failed recently when he talked to Putin and tried to call world leaders to attention, and they ignored his calls. Now Russia's ignoring the Pentagon's calls. Kamala Harris was sent to Eastern Europe just a few days before Russia invaded. They probably invaded because she was so antagonistic. Previously, Biden was VP under the Obama administration when Crimea was annexed. And Obama issued his famous red lines bullshit over and over as president. That was just one more example. Don't you do it. Oh, you did it? Here's a strongly worded letter. Never happened under Trump. You'll notice this. No, it is not necessary for us to cause food shortages. There are several things that we can do. The first, and by the way, for those of you watching on YouTube, pinned comment down below with links to other video hosting sites that I use. Of course, exclusive material and stuff. Just fucking join me on one or more of those platforms. Just trust me. Number one has to do with centrality, and this is not just an issue with food production. We have probably tens of millions, maybe hundreds of millions of arable land all around the U.S. in suburbs, outer suburbs, in some cases even in semi-urban areas, that literally can't be farmed. It could be used for victory garden stuff. You could at least grow herbs and some tomatoes, maybe have a salad garden. Some food would be able to be grown there. You know how easy it is to grow garlic? Stuff it in a pot full of compost and leave it there, and occasionally water it. That's basically it. Eventually it will choke itself out of existence if you don't harvest it enough under any nominal circumstances. And don't even talk about the lack of need for fertilizer that it has. So grow some garlic today. We'll destroy the vampire menace together. Stock up on silver. We'll take out the werewolves too. Oh, that's getting more expensive. Never mind. So number one, and the U.S. government's done this before. It was done during World War I, World War II, etc. Grow a victory garden. Hey, you've got land. We're banning housing authorities from preventing gardening. That's all you have to do. There should already be a federal law against housing authorities doing that. People get persecuted by their local Karens, by the local busybodies, because they have a couple of nasturtium plants in the wrong spot. You've got areas in the U.S. where, because it's dry here, you're not allowed to capture rainwater. What the fuck is that about? We do the same thing, by the way, with other things. We do it with energy. We should be incentivizing homeowners, especially in outer areas, farmers and suburbanites and stuff. They should be encouraged to have home solar and windmills and stuff. Instead, we've cut off all the subsidies for these things, and we're instead spending billions of dollars building huge mainline energy projects that are mainly, Chinese co-sponsored and Chinese-made, solar fields and stuff on land that could be used for other purposes, or simply left alone because it's in nature. It'd be nice to have something undeveloped in the world. 20 years from now, it'd be nice to see a tree occasionally that hadn't been planted in the last 10 years and wasn't part of a rotational cutting system. And we could do that. With energy, we could decentralize it. Communities could have a central hub, like a battery system generator, and you've got solar and home wind systems, and they're all hooked up together, and it's hooked up to the larger grid, but that component of the grid, in the event of a problem, can hold its own. people would still be able to have power. At least some of it. You know, you'd have a give and take sort of allotment system too among the neighbors. Maybe you got 100 people hooked up to the subgrid. It would definitely harden our grid against cyber attacks, but no politician ever supports this. Even the libertarian ones. I haven't even heard Rand Paul talk about such a proposal. We do the same with farming. Not just with victory gardening and stuff. The government, did you know this? This is like a Depression era linked sort of idea. The government pays farmers to leave land fallow. It also pays them to destroy huge amounts of crops. Literally pays them to destroy food. And you're talking about starvation and famine and shortages and stuff. We don't need shortages. Oh, that's right. There's one additional problem. And here's what Biden didn't count on because he's stupid. And a lot of people aren't holding him to account for this oversight. Russia produces a huge amount of the world's fertilizer supply, especially to U.S. farmers. Guess what commodity everyone really, really likes? It's going to become real problematic when that Russian fertilizer doesn't come in for the growing season, which begins around now in some parts of the country. Sugar. Sugar's a big thing. It's in basically everything. And corn syrup, too, of course, is an additive, a filler. Corn requires a lot of nitrogen, just saying. It's also used as feed for most of those livestock, which means the price of meat's going to soar up 10 times faster. You think that the wheat price is rising 70% is bad? Wait till you see all the products that are made with wheat that you like to eat. Do you realize how many products, staple grains and legumes and stuff are in? When they say let them eat lentils, sure, lentils can create their own nitrogen to an extent. They still require some fertility. Now, we could take care of this as well. We could have a nationwide hugelculture, back to the land, terra preta, hippie-trippy fucking gardening system to pump carbon into the soil. Probably figure out how to do that with natural gas emissions if you tried hard enough. Natural gas used to create certain fertilizers. The problem is that one of the most important crops, big cash crop out in the northwest in the U.S., by the way, sugar beets. Did you know that most of the sugar in the world comes from beets, big-ass tubers like the size of your head? Doesn't come from sugar cane. Sugar cane's much less efficient. Sugar beets are where it's at. They require an enormous amount of phosphate. They're root crops. A lot of you out there, you like carrots, you like beets, you like things that... Potatoes. Huge amount of phosphate required. They're a major cash crop that practically runs the economy of Montana and Idaho and numerous other states. Significant proportion up there, up where it's a little bit too chilly, short season for corn mainly. You realize how much the prices are going to soar? It's like I was watching, me and Liz were watching Townsend's again a few days ago. And one of it was about how to stretch bread. Like there were wheat famines back in the 1700s, quite a few of them, dozens of them. And one thing that people would do is use potatoes as filler. So you'd take the potato and you would mix it in with the flour, with the dough you're making. And if it was the right proportion and made right, you couldn't apparently really tell the difference. And I have had bread that has potato in it. I kind of like it better, I'm not going to lie. Cutting grain out of your diet aside, should be available for those that want it. Whole grains are reasonably good for you, at least in moderate quantities, and potatoes are okay too. You can do a million things with potatoes, including make glue, by the way. The potato prices will rise too. Well, if the wheat is more expensive and the potato, people eat a shit ton of bread and cereal. They should probably eat about half as much, but they really, really enjoy it. How are the lower classes even going to afford bread? You won't even have the Let Them Eat Cake Club. They certainly won't be eating any grains. I guess they will have to eat the bugs. There'll be bugs all over their house too because they can't hire an exterminator, so cockroach infestations will spread and people, make lemons into lemonade and they'll say, well, at least I had a sandwich today. It even contained protein. There's no chicken at the store. This is not necessary. The U.S. should have preemptively taken better actions economically. Certainly shouldn't have re-regulated the energy industry. That was a problem. Certainly shouldn't have nixed Keystone. A little bit of a problem. Shouldn't be fixated on this green energy boogeyman bullshit when we've got plenty of fuel. And apparently the peak oil thing was just a meme because we keep finding more and more of it. I'm beginning to think that maybe lack of technology was why we thought it was so limiting back in the 70s and 80s. I'm beginning to think maybe the science has been improved and we realized we were fucking completely wrong. And it's actually goddamn everywhere. And there is no oil shortage. It's 10 times more than we need for 100 years probably in the ground. It's just the will to actually pump it. People are sitting there worried about the planet turning into Tatooine. And even though the predictions have been wrong over and over, aren't you slightly worried about shortages, self-inflicted, on the back of continuing shortages, the result of lockdowns? Another element of centrality where the government really screwed up. State governments were the only groups empowered to issue the lockdowns that caused things like port closures, rail closures, shortages in trucking fleets and stuff like that. That was entirely state level. It's not even, you can even blame Biden for the last year of it, other than for the first few months of the asterisk administration, he encouraged lockdownerism on some level. He's kind of culpable for that, but he didn't create any of those policies. He attempted an OSHA mandate, that fell through, and numerous other attempts, but he never succeeded, and Trump wasn't responsible before Biden. It was the states. Too centralized. Centralized pandemic response crippled multiple economies. It happened elsewhere in the world too. What's happened now is you have a triple shortage. You have impending shortages due to a lack of Russian fuel supplies, fertilizers, etc. That'll cause prices to soar out of sight as well, despite demand being higher. The rich will still get their fill, but people in the middle class will begin skipping meals at some point. That's going to be catastrophic, by the way, for Biden's support. You have that. You also have the shortages as the result of shipping issues, port closures and stuff. That's still ameliorating now. And then you have the shortage simply because of the organic skyrocketing demand and the supply not able to keep up because a significant number of U.S. industries like factories and shit shuttered and went bankrupt. Well, it takes time for them to come back online to compensate for the demand. Meanwhile, that's driving prices up. And that helps to make those businesses open faster because there's more profit potentially to be made. And then what does the Biden admin do and the Feinsteins and the Warrens of the world? Oh, well, we need to do something about these price gouging corporations. It's all their fault that this is happening. Yet the U.S. government has nothing to do with U.S. monetary policy. Nothing to do with trade relations. Nothing to do with sanctions crippling foreign economies. That's not Biden's fault. I agree. I mean, he's out to lunch. He doesn't make call the shots himself. He's the grown-up version of the kid from Deliverance, incest and all. And so you can't blame him centrally for the decision-making. But he's still there. He's still the duly elected president, or rather steward of the United States. He should be, if he wanted to be honest with people for the first time in his life, he'd say, look, this is entirely self-inflicted. I'm effectively asking you to sacrifice for months and months and wreck the U.S. economy in order to usher in more globalism, using Russia as an excuse. That's what this is about. The U.S. giving arms to the Ukrainians does not require energy-crippling sanctions that hit us arguably as hard as they hit this so-called enemy. What's the fucking point? What's the goddamn point? Yeah, we caused breadlines and 20% unemployment and triple-digit inflation in the United States, effectively creating a new Great Depression. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I'm sure that'll be good for global stability over the next couple of decades. I'm sure that we won't see a repeat of the 30s and 40s sort of thing again with all the destabilization then. Things are different now. People who are allowed to can talk to one another on the internet, and this has caused real John Lennon and Yoko Ono style love bead fucking hippie vibes. Things are different this time. It could never happen again. It's a fucking history's already repeating itself, dude. Don't be a douche. That's about all. Peace out.